Welcome to Dining Room Stories with Domar and Andrea, where we take you behind the scenes of the restaurant business world with stories and conversation that inspire. Today, we are joined by an exceptional entrepreneur and industry leader. From leaving behind a six-figure corporate career to building one of Australia's largest online champagne retailers, she has transformed her passion into a thriving business. Her relentless pursuit of excellence and ability to turn vision into success make her one of the most influential figures in the industry today. We are super excited to welcome to Dining Room Stories, Kyla Kirkpatrick, the Champagne Dame.
Thank you.
Benvenuta.
What a very nice introduction. You know, it's funny when you work in your own business, you don't think about people's perspective of you. You know, it's all about your internal dialogue. It's interesting.
As
Thank
a
you.
business owners, we are always critical of our, what we do.
Yes.
But sometimes we have achieved a lot and it's good to get recognized.
Yeah, it's true.
It's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for being here with us today. Grazie
Pleasure.
mille. I always like to speak a little bit of Italian at the beginning. So let's start. So before champagne, you were on a different career path. Have you ever imagined to ended up in this wine career?
Never. Never, ever did wine cross my mind in the beginning. I was a country kid, I guess. I mean, I grew up in outer western suburbs of Melbourne, so certainly not in a family that was drinking champagne or drinking fine wines. My dad brewed beer. It was a simple life. And my form of escapism as a kid, of a very mundane life, was to read books. And reading books has always been my form of escapism, and that was really the result of my success, I think, because I did really well at school, and I went to Melbourne University and did a double degree, an economics degree, and an arts degree majoring in Mandarin Chinese. And I started my life in banking and finance. So very much in that very senior corporate banking world, very traditional. But yeah, I somehow deviated off the track.
Yeah. So what was the spark? So what happened is there's some tipping points in your life that actually show you the path.
I think that love of reading and that love of history was such an important thing for me. And I was a very theatrical kid, and I was interested in stuff. I loved politics, and I loved religion, I loved history, I loved war, fascination with theology and kings and queens and, all of these really big things. And it was 2005. I was on fiancé number 1. I've just broken up with fiancé number 3. So some people measure time through.
So you're actually counting the fiancé.
It gives me a timeline.
Oh, yeah.
So fiancé number 1, and I had a great career. I had the dog. I had the nice house on the beach, and I read this article on Napoleon Bonaparte and his fascination with champagne, and how he used to ride his cavalry, into the Champagne region and liquor his men on champagne. And I just loved this story. And I thought, I'm going to read a book on champagne. I don't really know anything about this wine. And then I realized this really strong connection between war and wine, particularly in Europe. And it's fascinating. And I sort of kept delving a little deeper, and then eventually read a book on champagne, the great widow Clicquot, and how she was one of the great businesswomen of all time and such a pioneer. I was really inspired by that. And then soon I was reading every piece of literature you could possibly find and really getting deep down into the history and the story of champagne. And
Amazing.
I just fell in love with it. At that point in time, I fell in love with it, and I decided, I still want to know more. So just pre-Facebook. So I wrote a pen and paper letter to a gentleman who'd written my favorite book on champagne, put it in the mailbox, thought nothing more of it, went back to my banking life, went back to my fiance, everything was normal until I opened the letterbox, 8 weeks later, and I had a letter back. And basically this man said to me, "You sound so passionate. Get on a plane, come out to Paris, come to Champagne, and let me teach you everything I know." And that was that sliding doors moment in life where you get them. Do you take them? Some people do, some people don't, you know, and I could have gone for a week. I could have gone for 2 weeks. I could have gone for a month. And I thought, you know, fuck it, I'm going forever. Sorry about swearing.
No, that's all right. So you took the risk.
I took the risk.
And the opportunity was there.
I
and
don't
you choose
know.
to pick it, right?
Well, you know, the opportunity to meet this man was there, but I'd never been to Champagne. You know, I didn't know that there was a career waiting at the other end of that airplane. I didn't know what was going to happen next. But I think sometimes you just need to take a leap of faith and trust yourself and trust your intuition, which some people don't listen to sometimes, and it's very important, and just go and see where your heart takes you, because sometimes we're so in our head that we don't listen to our hearts.
That's amazing. So in this trip in 2005, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've been to Chateau Les Carrières.
Yes.
Like, sorry for my French
it's good.
pronunciation, I'm trying. So
good.
how was it experience? Like, can you tell us a bit more?
So Champagne as a region was very heavily bombed in World War I and World War II, but World War I in particular. And a lot of the beautiful chateaux were destroyed. But there's one chateau that remained, and it's Chateau Les Carrières, as you say. And it was the home of Madame Pommery, actually, one of her primary homes. And it's a magnificent estate, which is now a Michelin restaurant. So this was the first opportunity to meet this gentleman, this author who'd invited me to France, and we were doing a Michelin lunch, my first. And it was phenomenal. I remember the first course, they brought out this plate that looked like a tiny garden. Every single detail on that plate, like there was grass and there was a little path and there were miniature mushrooms and flowers and, you know, so beautiful that you don't actually want to put your fork in it to eat it because it's just a piece of art.
It's like a painting.
It was like a painting. And I just think, wow. And I remember being really tired and really jet lagged. We had our first bottle of champagne, which was a champagne from his vineyard. Things started to warm up. The conversation started to flow. The meal was exceptional. And I just remember it being such a euphoric moment. It was just such a beautiful, magical way to start my journey in Champagne.
Amazing. Like when I came to Australia, because I have a similar story, I would say. So I came in when I was 29 here to Australia. So I just took my opportunity, and I think things are going great. I love this country. But what I was really surprised, like with my first Australian fiance, I would say.
How many have you had?
I would say 3 at this point in time. Yeah. It's like,
So fiancé number 1.
I would say, yeah. And so like, I was invited at that house, at the family house in like North Sydney, Waverton. And actually the mom opened like a bottle of, she called it champagne, but it was sparkling wine. Ooh. So I was like, why they call sparkling wine champagne in Australia?
Yeah, it's a bugbear of mine. It's a huge bugbear of mine. And we're getting better in Australia. We are. And the CIVC, the Champagne Society, and me and Tyson and other educators and other people have really helped to teach people that Champagne is a region, it's a place. Champagne with a small c, made in the exacting standards that the CIVC would like, is Champagne the wine. And anything outside of that region is just sparkling wine.
I know. I'm from Milano, so definitely I understand that. Like,
you drink a lot of champagne in Milan.
Franciacorta.
Yes.
Then we can talk about like Prosecco and champagne, but like it's really, we understand the difference. But like I was so surprised that in Australia they call it, it's champagne. It's like,
yes.
Whatever.
It was a problem for a long time, particularly in the 70s and the 80s, before there was a lot of work promoting Champagne as a region, and for the Champagne Society sort of came out strong legally and said, okay, enough guys, like you can't use the word champagne, we're going to come down on you. So we've had some changes, we've had some growth, but I do think that there's still a little bit of education to be done. I'm just one woman.
Kyla, walking away from a 6-figure job and taking the leap, were you just following your guts, or what was the moment?
I think I've probably always been a risk taker, and I don't take risks with my life. You know, I don't like skiing and I don't jump off mountains, but when it comes to business and when it comes to money, I think I'm intuitive enough to trust my gut that I can make a good decision when it comes to my life. And that was the decision. You know, I needed to follow my heart as much as I loved my career in banking, you know, and I still think about it. I think, you know, what if I'd stayed? I thought about it this weekend. I'd be on a, $500,000 base. I'd be earning, $600,000 or $700,000 a year. I'd get 8 weeks off a year if I was lucky. What would that feel like? What would that look like? Would I be happy?
Hi guys, I hope you're enjoying the episode. Remember to subscribe to our channel to get updates and keep enjoying the rest of the episode.
Probably not as happy as what I am doing what I am now. You know, I followed my passion. But I think sometimes you do need to take a risk, and it was scary and I didn't know what was going to be at the other end. But you know, you can always go back to what you were doing before, but you can never have that chance again.
You can tell you're glowing.
Yeah, I love it. And you know, people always say to me, it's 20 years this year. So I'm celebrating my 20th anniversary of working in Champagne this year.
Congratulations, really.
Thank you.
Amazing.
And I just got little goosebumps. I still remember the beginning. But you know, there's been times where people say, you know, how do you keep finding the love and how do you keep finding inspiration? And for me, it's twofold. It's for me pivoting and moving and coming up with things that ignite my passion, but it's also feeding off the passion and the love that I get from my customers. You know, when I do a presentation or I tell a story or, you know, I connect with someone on Champagne to see their happiness, to see their enjoyment, to see their satisfaction. That's what drives me.
And now we see all the success, but tell us about the beginning of the journey, the struggle to get here.
Look, does anyone get a risk-free, struggle-free journey in business? I don't know. I don't know.
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either. I think, you know, yes, some businesses are easier to run than others. And sometimes we choose businesses that are harder. You know, I often joke with my friends that if I come back again in another life, I'm going to sell G-strings, you know, because
it's easier.
They're easier to ship. They don't need climate control. They're non-perishable. They're not as fragile. They're not as heavy. You know, I'm going into lingerie.
I love it. You need a business partner. No? Happy to join.
You know, so sometimes the businesses that we choose because we love them, you know, and that actually gives us the leading force to succeed, because you have to do what you love. If you don't love what you do, then you can't do the hours that we do. Restaurateurs and people who work in their passion plays. So some industries are harder, and yes, there are certainly challenges, and I've had mine. I think there's two big ones for me when you're running any business: making good decisions, and a lot of the time, making good decisions comes down to people. Whether you are hiring a contractor or an agency or someone to help you, it's who do I trust? Who's going to have my back? Can I find the right company to follow out my dream, my belief? Or it's employees, one of our most expensive, one of the biggest costs in the business. Employees can really be a risky decision for a growing business and a young business, because they take a lot of money out of our own pockets and into someone else's. So you've got to make the right decision. So that's been hard. I've made a few mistakes in terms of partners. When I say partners, I mean, you know, partners in services and also in employees that have been expensive mistakes. And you can't take that back, but you can learn. And I've had to keep learning and keep trusting to a certain extent. But I think that's one of the biggest challenges in running a business is people.
I was actually watching a video of Steve Jobs, and he was like, how do you build like a $1 trillion companies, like hiring A players? Because when you start hiring A players, then they're gonna wanna work with other A players. So you start creating a culture where everyone is like,
yeah, but that takes a long time, I believe. You know, it doesn't happen straight away.
It is tricky. And I was really lucky because I think what I did with Emperor was so unique, and I had such a beautiful brand and such a beautiful ethos that I actually had a couple of people come and knock on my door and say, hey, we've watched you for a long time. You know, great woman called Tasha Harp-Keneally, who was very, very high up at Treasury Wines and Estates, you know, significant salary. And she said, look, I really admire you, and I'm prepared to take a massive pay cut to come and work for you. And because I believe in what you're doing, you know, otherwise you don't have the salary, you know, to be able to pay these people. Like, it's really expensive. Until you get those runs on the board and you start to get some momentum, it's hard. So you do need people that can buy in with your vision and come along on the journey and maybe take a bit of a pay cut in the beginning for some equity or just for the love of it. But
and on this topic, how do you balance your passion with the reality of running a profitable business?
Super difficult. Yeah. And look, I sometimes question myself, am I the best person to run the business? You know, and a lot of us don't say that as entrepreneurs. Is there someone better to fill my shoes.
But it takes a lot of self-confidence in yourself.
It does. And that's a question that you should ask yourself from time to time. Or what is it that I'm missing? Or what is it that I'm lacking? Because we can't do everything in a business. And I know entrepreneurs, often in the beginning, we have this handbrake that's ourselves because we try and do it all. And sometimes you have to do it all. But we have blind spots that we don't see. So then it's about the next step from starting and doing it all is, okay, what's my big weakness? If I'm a big vision person, which I am, who's in the detail? Who's making sure that everything's lining up? Who's making sure that my shipments are on time? Who's making sure that my costings are right? So give that person a job, hire that person, get the yin to your yang. And that's really important. So it's a bit like playing chess where you start with just one or two pieces on the board and then you end up with a whole army. But that takes time. And yes, there'll be some mistakes along the way and you'll move a couple of chess pieces and sometimes you go backwards and sometimes you get checkmated and it's tricky, but you just got to keep moving forward. And I think that for me, it's a passion play. But yes, at the end of the day, we've got to make money. We've got to pay bills. We've got family to feed. And
when is the right time to take the steps,
It really depends on the business, You never really know. I'm always trying to move forward. And I think for me, every 3 years, it's a stop and reflect. I've added many strings to my bow. So in Emperor Champagne, I've got many revenue channels. I started with the online channel. Actually, I started with the club first. The club has been around for 11 years. And then I had the online store. And then I started importing and distributing and doing wholesale. And then I started doing corporate and gifting. So I just kept, every 3 years, I just kept adding another bow. We'll see what's next.
So interesting. Starting from the club and then moving to the online, it's a really interesting choice, I would say. Today, everyone was like, I work in marketing online, so my choice would be, I'm just going to go on, the online side first. So what was the reason behind this decision?
There's a very strong reason behind, and that is we started with the club and we would import. So we import custom champagnes every month for our clients that are unavailable in Australia. And that person takes that wine to a dinner party and then 10 other people go, well, where can I buy it? I've never seen that before. And then I would go and do a masterclass and talk to people about these unique champagnes I was serving. And they're like, well, where can we buy it? You couldn't. When I started in 2005, you only had the big guys, the top 7, LVMH, Pommery, Moom, Tattinger, Paul Roger, Bollinger.
You seem so bored about talking about those brands. They're actually pretty good champagne.
Thank you for saying that. And it's true. I can be a little bit flippant about the big guys, but they're so important. They're the ones that open the door for the rest of the smaller guys to come in behind. And they're beautiful champagnes and they're amazing. And they've got great history. But you're right in that my passion really,
I can see the passion.
But
really
also when you get more
growers.
educated, you want to try something more niche or a small grower.
Correct. And when I arrived in Champagne for the first time in 2005, I'd only ever had experience with the big houses. Everybody knows Veuve Clicquot, everybody knows Moët et Chandon and Pommery and Moom. But when I arrived in Champagne, when I first met this gentleman and we had this lunch, and I don't know whether I should say this, but I will, but I'm driving, so first time in Champagne, I've had 2 bottles of champagne. I've had virtually no sleep in 24 hours. I'm driving my car on the wrong side of the road, gear stick in the wrong hand, and this guy finishes lunch and he says, come back to my house. I've got something to show you. And I'm like, oh, Kyla, my mother's words, how do you know he's not like a mass murderer, or does this guy know who you are, or has he seen a picture of you, and do you know him? And I'm like, no, Mum, don't worry, you got to be trusting. Anyway, so for safety, after 2 bottles of champagne on the wrong side of the road, I drive, I follow him. And I got to his vineyard and he's being weird at this point. He's like, come around the back, I've got something to show you. And I'm starting to panic. And I get around the back of his house, and in the backyard were all these local growers. And he said, if you've come halfway around the world to meet us, to learn about Champagne, to learn about a region you've never been to before, then the least I can do is throw you a welcome party. Wow. And he had all these amazing growers, oh my God.
What a surprise.
Oh, it was
amazing.
Incredible. Incredible. Some incredible growers. And they were all showing off, Remy, go get that rosé, and Henri, bring that vintage. And, I drank champagne that day that I have never heard of and would never have again. Like my mind was blown at how kind and generous and passionate these people were. And I was looking at these labels. I'm like, we don't have this in Australia. I've never seen this. 3,000 bottles, 5,000 bottles, 20,000 bottles. I'm like, we need to send this back to Australia. And look, while I was there that trip, I had, the offer with Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy to come and join the LVMH team. And that was the only viable position at that time. So I took it, but really in my head and in my heart, these 3,000 growers that no one in Australia has ever heard of. So for me, starting the online store, specializing in grower champagne, I mean, we say that we're Australia's home of champagne. We have everything. We've got over 200 brands. Wow. But, we have the biggest range of growers in Australia.
That's amazing. So as a woman, right? Because this story is amazing, really interesting, but like in a male-dominated industry, how do you feel? How was like navigating the whole experience over the years?
It's a really valid point, and it's kind of annoying, I guess, to start with. But I started in banking and finance, and I was rising very quickly in banking and finance. And I was in the 90s in banking with misogyny at its highest, and I was running reasonable sized projects where I had a lot of men in my team who would turn up late, not turn up at all, be dismissive in meetings. So I already had a bit of an upper hand on how to deal with men who wanted to put me in a box. The wine industry was absolutely driven by men at that point. From a winemaker perspective, from running the vineyards, from running bottle shops, there were no female wine importers at that point in time. There were no females who ran bottle shops at that point in time. It was very much, there were no female educators at that point in time. I was 20 years ago, and wine education was so stuffy, it was technical, and it was isolating. They weren't talking to women either. This was, I don't understand it. Women are 50% of the purchase equation, and you're talking about pH and all this wanky stuff that really doesn't connect the heart and the mind to any bottle of wine. So it was something that I had to push through. I struggled with, men being a barrier as an entrepreneur when I was at LVMH, and also men being a barrier to me running my own business. I was certainly very early in the piece as a woman running a booze business.
And that's incredible. You created an amazing community.
Yeah, thank
well
you.
Done. Your approach isn't about selling champagne. Mm-hmm. It's about storytelling and education.
100%. I think for me, and really like any product, a connection to a product is about connecting story. And a lot of people forget that the names on the bottles, Veuve Clicquot, Moët et Chandon, they're not brands.
It's people.
They're people. They lived, they've lost, they loved, they've hurt, they've got stories. And I share their stories. I cannot teach you about champagne and separate the history. I cannot teach you about Veuve Clicquot or Bollinger without telling you about Lily or without telling you about Barbe Nicole. I can't do that. And when you come to one of my classes or when you hear me talk about wine, I'm going to tell you about the family. I'll tell you about Cedric Mousset. I'll tell you about his chickens and how he's off the grid and the way that he runs his vineyard, because it's storytelling. Storytelling, that's what connects people and product. And that's
amazing.
So important. And we forget that. I don't want to tell you just about cepage and pH and how many years on lees and boring. I have got people that have come to a masterclass of mine 10 years ago that will recount stories that I've told them 10 years ago that they now recount at dinner parties. I'll run into people at the airport or in the supermarket or somewhere and go, oh my God, I came to that show 10 years ago at the MCG or here or there, and I remember you telling the story, and my wife recalls it at every dinner party. And I still buy that champagne. It's storytelling at the heart.
I love that.
What's a misconception people have about champagne that you would like to change?
Well, I think for me, a lot of people tend to stay with the big brands, and that's okay. But, that's where you start your journey. And I think, as a product life cycle and a product journey, you might have a bottle of Veuve Clicquot. Great. And you might move to a Veuve Clicquot Rosé or a Veuve Clicquot Vintage. And then you might move to, a mid-tier family estate like a Paul Roger or a Bilcar Samon. What I want people to do is to really trust the Champagne region. If you've got champagne on that label, you can tell that winemaker's gone to a lot of effort for that bottle. There's exacting standards, there's rules, there's obligations. Everything's been done to such a precision with such a passion. Trust the industry, trust the winemakers, get off the beaten track and try something different. Yes, it's expensive, but you're not going to go wrong.
You're the exclusive importer of Fleur de Miraval, Brad Pitt's champagne.
Yes.
Because you're talking about brands, can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Yes. So actually, I get approached by champagne houses almost weekly for me to import them. I guess I'm quite unique in the champagne world in that I'm multi-channel. So we have online, we have a club, we have corporate, we have concierge. We're about to launch Emperor Black, which is a very high-end VIP champagne service. I do masterclasses. So our sales channel is very comprehensive, whereas normally an importer, he just sells to bottle shops and restaurants. He doesn't do PR, he doesn't do events, he doesn't do all facets. I was approached by Brad's Champagne, Fleur de Miraval, 2 years ago, I think, to launch in Australia because we are holistic in what we do. So we do marketing, we do PR, we do events, we do private placement, we do wholesale. Originally, the brand was with Dan Murphy's and, they stick it on a shelf and it will languish. They don't really care about telling the story. They don't really care what's going on with, the marketing and PR of that product. They put it in their stores and they let it go. Whereas we have a real passion about the products that we import and we work very closely with our importers to get the best result for them in the market. So,
have you met Brad Pitt in person?
I have not met Brad Pitt in person, but his winemaker is here today. I'm launching a new champagne for Brad Pitt tomorrow. So Brad started in the wine world in 2011 with Fleur de Miraval, the beautiful vineyard in Provence, which is incredible. So he started making still rosé with his then wife, Angelina Jolie. There's been some controversy in that they were 50-50 in this vineyard and she might have rumoured to have sold her share to some Russian mafia. So there's been a bit of an ongoing battle about Fleur de Miraval, but Brad's come out and has decided, you know what, I love champagne, I'm going to start a champagne house, but he's done it with the Perrin family, a very famous French wine family, and the very esteemed Pierre Peters Champagne House. So there's an awesome team. The champagnes are phenomenal. And I'm lucky enough to launch a new champagne for Brad this week. So Petite Fleur.
So Brad, if you're listening to us,
Brad, I think that you should break up with your new French girlfriend and come over to Australia and have a romance with me.
Yes.
I speak on behalf of all the women of Australia. Have a romance with us all. I haven't met him yet.
Are you going to expand your business overseas as well?
We have been looking at that. We did actually have offices in Singapore before COVID. And actually the drawn out nature of the lockdown, we think it was bad in Australia and it was, but Singapore did actually go on for quite a bit longer, the no hosting of events. And that really impacted our business and for me to be able to get to Singapore. So we had offices in the Champagne Club in Singapore, which was going really well for a number of years, and then we had to pull the pin on that. I'm in an interesting position where, and this is not been discussed publicly before, where I was offered a significant amount of money last year by a Swiss bank to globalize the business and to move into retail. So to have champagne concept stores with champagne bars and ateliers at a global level, with the first store being in Paris. And I said to the banker, don't you think it's unusual, this Aussie girl selling champagne to the champagne? And he said, not at all. He said, the French are actually largely unorganized in the way that we sell champagne in Paris. And there is no dedicated champagne bar and atelier in Paris. So we think it's a benefit. I haven't said no to that deal. I just haven't said yes. And this is a really mature decision, one that I might not have made earlier in my career, earlier in my time in launching Emperor. You know, any money's good money.
It's really interesting, and it's really hard to penetrate the French market because the French culture is super exclusive. And I say like from an Italian perspective, and the north of Italy is really super connected with France. We love France. But at the same time, we know there is the cousins of Oltre-Alp. They're similar to us, but a little bit cliche, if I can say.
It's tricky, you know, and for me, I haven't said no forever. I just said no for right now. And as an entrepreneur who loves a challenge and has a hard time saying no, and that's a big issue for me, is that, you know, this month alone, I've got 20-something events that I'm personally presenting at, plus launching a new champagne, plus. And look, to be honest with you, I'm super hands-on in the business. I mean, my nails are broken and cut. I've been in the warehouse all morning. I'm covered in scratches from getting up on the forklift and shifting pallets and counting stock because I wanted to have my eyes on the prize. What have I got in my warehouse? Where's my money sitting? And, you know, I tend to have a tendency, and I certainly have in my early part of the career, of saying yes to everything. So right now I'm saying I'm putting this project on pause because it's going to spread me so thin at a global level, and I just need a minute to think about it.
It's a big decision.
Massive decision.
And especially you will have to move to France.
I'll need to move globally, because to roll out a business of that scale, I need to have a global team, and it's a big decision. So that may come. I've got 2 other projects sort of in mind that I want to finish first, one being a book and one being a documentary. These are passion projects that, you know, coming into my 20th year of working in Champagne, that have been in here for so long that I just need to get them out. So maybe I'll do that first, and then I'll move into a global play. So it's...
What motivates you after many years?
It's a good question. I think it's just knowing that I love what I do and feeding off the satisfaction of my clients. There are days where I'm tired, and I'll be honest, I woke up this morning and had holy crap, you know.
It's Monday.
It was Monday, but it's not just Monday. Like normally, I've never had a sick day, and I've never gotten up and gone, I don't want to go to work, you know, today. Like I just don't have that feeling. I love going to work. I love it. And today I woke up and I went, oh, wow, you know, I was like nervous this morning because I looked at my calendar for the rest of the month and I am all over the place. You know, I've got 6 flights this week and a lot on my plate. And I'm like, can I do it? Sometimes the internal dialogue, which is always a danger for entrepreneurs, is, can I do it? Am I going to get through this? And I had to reach out to someone. I had to reach out to someone who I knew was stronger than me and, you know, and say, look, I'm nervous, you know. I needed a pep talk. And often it's important that we do that internal dialogue, because more often than not, the person we speak to the most is ourselves. Whether you realize it or not, whether you're in the shower, whether you're brushing your teeth, you're having an internal dialogue. You've really got to catch that conversation. You've got to watch that monkey mind. You've got to watch that negative shoulder. You got to have the positive shoulder and not the other one, that you're motivating yourself and that you're pushing yourself forward. But every now and then, when things get tough, you need to bring in someone else. It just gives you a bit of clarity and a little bit of the push and the pat on the back that you need.
It's not easy being an entrepreneur, but I believe we are built differently.
We are, and it's not something for everybody. Entrepreneurship is not for everyone, you know, and in my many years, I do a lot of keynote speaking and a lot of presenting with women who want to make the leap of faith and come out of corporate life and turn their passion into their career. It's not for everybody, you know. He who hesitates is lost. My father always said that to me. If you're hesitating, if you're questioning yourself, if you're overthinking things, you might not survive as an entrepreneur. You know, you need to be able to make a quick decision, trust your intuition and go.
Yeah.
If you're amazing. A procrastinator, stay where you are, stay in your lane.
Yeah, if I can talk for myself, like my mom, when she was 26, she became a notary in Italy and she was so young. So for her, the step was moving from family that was like more working the bureaucracy towards her becoming like a successful like entrepreneur in that sense. So what you're saying that now the path is different. Some women have been really successful in the corporate world and they want to do something different.
Yes.
So what is, in your opinion, where is this generation going?
I think that there are some people who make great entrepreneurs, and I think there are some people that aren't. I don't know that it's related to our generation, but what I will say is that the barriers to entry for being an entrepreneur have never been lower. And in my early years, 20 years ago, going to university was so important. It was important to your parents. It was important culturally. It was something that was considered successful in terms of the eyes of the community and status. Not anymore. Like I speak to a lot of young people today who are like, oh, no, I'm not going to go to university. I'm going to come straight out and start a business because we have this beautiful thing called e-commerce. Now, e-commerce is saturated. The internet has changed things, but it's lowered the barriers to entry. For you to be an entrepreneur 20 years ago, you had to go and buy a shop. You had to start a business. You had to produce something. You had to manufacture something. You couldn't sell information. You couldn't sell a product online. You couldn't drop ship. So barriers to entry have become lower, but does that mean you are built for it? That's the question you need to ask yourself. You've got to have that chutzpah. You've got to have that drive. And there's going to be days that are really tough. There's going to be days where you question yourself. There's going to be days where you don't want to get out of bed. But if you don't have that, if you know in your heart that you're not that kind of person that can just get up and go no matter what, don't do it. If you can't handle 7 days a week, don't do it. If you can't handle 12 hours a day, don't do it.
That's amazing advice. And you built basically the Australian largest champagne club and a really strong community around your brand. How do you feel about that? Do you feel proud? Do you feel happy?
I do feel proud. One of the nicest things for me and one of the things that brings me the most pleasure is seeing the camaraderie between my clients and my customers. And, you know, at champagne events now, people will turn up and they've seen each other. They come, I haven't lost a customer in, 14 years. Like the same customers come to my events. That's why I have to keep reinventing the wheel. But now there's a community amongst my clients that travel together, that drink champagne together. So the club has sort of morphed into a community of like-minded people. And I always say to people, like when I take my champagne tours and I go to France, come as a solo traveler. You'll never feel alone. You won't feel alone with me and you won't feel alone with the other people in my tour. And I love watching. So every time I take a champagne tour, I create a WhatsApp group. And that WhatsApp group lives on forever. And I see people share their kids' birthdays and dinner parties and travels, and the community is really important.
Okay, Omar, we're going to France next.
I think so. How do I sign up?
You would love it.
Membership.
It's one of the best things I do.
It's probably unconsciously what's stopping you to accept the Swiss bank offer.
Potentially. And also just that, reality is I'm a single mother, I run 2 businesses, I have a lot of responsibility. I have a very smart daughter who's very accommodating of my need to travel and present and work late and early drop-offs and, but life also has other obligations and there's a lot of factors to consider before you go global on a business. It takes a lot of effort.
Yeah, that's amazing. So do you think that money is the most important thing, or do you think that money is like a byproduct of success?
You can't start thinking about the money. If you don't love your product and if you don't love what you do, you will never succeed because it gets boring. And when you're bored and your attention wanes and you get shiny ball syndrome, where you've got to go and start playing with another product or another business or another idea because you're bored with the one you've got, then you spread yourself too thin, you'll fail.
So how do you challenge yourself? Like, it's like, after all, these years, like, how do you keep stepping out of your comfort zone and maintaining yourself motivated?
It's pivoting within your space and continuous self-improvement. So, it's really important to keep improving. So I will add something different to the business. What else can I do? Like I've just spent a fortune and a lot of time rebuilding my club, the technical aspects of my club, which hasn't launched. It's launching next month. I keep doing things which make me better, make the business better, keep me interested. What else can I do better? And what else can I bring to my customers? Launching Emperor Black, which is our very high end. We're launching in Monaco in May. On a super yacht. Now I'm introducing a business where I'll be sourcing very high-end champagnes, back vintages straight from the cellar to satisfy, the people of Australia who are obsessed with champagne like I am. You just got to keep inventing within your lane. but don't deviate too far out of it because you get stretched too thin and then the house starts to fall down.
Are you a perfectionist?
I'm not. I don't think you can be in this business. I think it's good to have some people around you who do have that eye for detail. But if I were a perfectionist, I would be stunted. I couldn't keep growing. I couldn't keep going because I think sometimes you've just got to start and you've just got to go. And a lot of people wait to start their business for the perfect time, for the perfect opportunity, for all the ducks to align, for everything to be in a row.
That never arrives.
Some of my ducks are geese. Things aren't perfect. It's never going to be perfect. I actually think it's more important just to move and just to keep going than to have everything all lined up. So yeah, I'm definitely not a perfectionist.
I agree. And so what advice would you give to entrepreneurs that struggle with self-doubt?
This is one of the biggest issues. So number one, you need to get control of this beast, your mind. And
how do we do that?
Well, it depends on the person. But number one, be careful who you spend your time with. Now, you might have a mother, a father, a brother, a partner, a lover, or a friend who's a naysayer. Don't talk to those people about your business. Don't talk to those people about your idea. If you're getting someone who's expressing a negative sentiment without a valid foundation for that advice, step back. Be very careful who you spend your time with. You can spend time with that person, you can share with that person, just don't talk about your business. So number one, getting other people's negative opinions out of your head. That helps. And then number two, being really cognizant of the way that you talk to yourself, your positive talk. And you can read. So for me, every night before I go to bed, I listen to a podcast or something on Audible.
I mean, that's great. You're in the right place, right?
Yes. And I listen to other people who've been there, done that, walked a few steps ahead of me. And if I'm depending on my mood when I get up in the morning and I drive to my office, depending on how I feel, if I need something I've got a couple of songs that just get me in the mood. Go, come on, fuck it, let's go, Kyla, let's go. You've got this. And if I'm in that mood, in that hype state, in that motivated energy, I'll play a cranking tune and I've got a selection of them. Sometimes like this morning where I was having self-doubt on whether I could get through this month, I played someone who was inspirational to me. I played a podcast and I listened to that. And then when that wasn't enough, I reached out to someone who I knew was really successful, who had my back, who gave me the words that I needed to pull out of my funk, get my shit together and keep going on my day. Watch the opinions of others because they're not always valid, and then watch the way that you talk to yourself.
What an advice. Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's amazing.
On a different topic, when you're not drinking champagne, what are you drinking?
There are probably two drinks that I like the most when I'm not drinking champagne. So if I'm in playtime, so going out with my girls, ready to have some fun, I am Kyla tequila. I love tequila. It's a natural upper. I love a margarita. I love it spicy, hotter the better. That's my let's go. If that's not it, and I'm at home after work, sort of relaxing, I love Pinot Noir. I love red wines. I love Italian red wines. I don't mind a Barolo in winter, something a bit heartier.
Barolo. That's good.
Grazie mille. I do love a red wine. Yeah.
So, what advice would you give to yourself, to a younger Kyla?
I have to say, and this might sound a little bit morbid, but I think sometimes being morbid is good. If I died tomorrow, I'd be pretty happy with what I've done. I've actually really pushed myself. So there's not a lot that I could go back and reflect on and say, hey, Kyla, you could have done this better, or I wouldn't have done that. In absolute honesty, I've taken risks, I've pushed myself, I got perfect grades in a really ordinary school when, no one wanted to study because it wasn't cool. I just tuned out the noise, I focused, I followed my love, I followed my career, I took a leap, I pursued it, I started Emperor, which was really ballsy. I had to bang on a lot of doors to get capital and people kept turning me away. I don't know. I don't know whether I would change anything. I'm really happy with what I've done. Maybe I've taken on too much, if anything. And I'm sort of at the point now where maybe I'm having that thought to myself that I could start to slow down a little bit and start to smell the roses. Maybe that's a point. Maybe there's been times along the way where I could have stopped to smell the roses, but I'm pretty happy with the way that I've taken my path.
You've done great.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You built an incredible career. Well done.
Thank you.
You are an amazing entrepreneur.
Thank you.
For us, it was a pleasure having you at Dining Room Stories.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you for
so
having
much.
me. I really appreciate it.
Grazie.
Grazie,
mille.
Kyla.
Thank you.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the episode. I'm gonna see you in the next one.
Welcome to Dining Room Stories with Domar and Andrea, where we take you behind the scenes of the restaurant business world with stories and conversation that inspire.